Hi, Ms. Applebaum. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and I'm going to ask you a few questions for our Take 5 interview series here at Jepson. The first question I have is that in The Twilight of Democracy, you describe the manner in which many authoritarian states and their leaders rule by creating a big lie that offers followers an alternative reality and provides the leader a litmus test for party loyalty. Vladimir Putin's current propaganda campaign on the war in Ukraine, which he forbids Russian media and citizens to even call a war, is rife with big lies. How can liberal democracies disprove these lies and counter the hold Putin has on many of his citizens?
That's a great question. It's one of the prime questions of the moment. And if you'd asked it to me 6 months ago, I would have given you a different answer from now. The U.S. has had both ways of reaching Russians through radio, TV, websites that are funded by U.S. government. There's a very old organization called Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which has broadcast into Russia since Soviet times. We, but also others, and they have independent funding too, that have also helped independent Russian media tell an alternate story to what Putin has told. And Russia actually had very strong alternate media. There was sort of online television channel called TV Rain, Dosht in Russian, and a couple of websites that were accessible to quite a lot of people and were quite widely read. What's just happened is that all of those things have been taken off. They've been banned or they've been taken offline, and all kinds of social media has also been removed. And so now the task is to find ways of reaching Russians. One way to do it is by talking to the diaspora, so the many Russians who've left Russia or who live in Ukraine or Kazakhstan, on the edges of Russia, and who have relatives and communicate. So it's still very worth speaking in Russian to Russians. I argued today in Congress that we should think about doing that. We should step up our broadcasting to Russians, even if we can't reach into Russia itself. I will say one more thing, which is that there's also a lot of talk about how we could do something called digital samizdat. So samizdat was the old, in the Soviet era, these were the illegal publications. And so the question is, what kinds of communication can we defend? Would it be email chains? Would it be using the Telegram app? Are there ways in which we can get Russians to communicate with one another? Can we somehow help that or amplify it? But you're right, it's a very difficult problem.
Yeah, and one of the other challenges that I wanted to touch on is how increasingly these sanctions don't seem to be doing enough to really curtail Putin and his ambitions. So kind of looking at these imposed sanctions and all the military and humanitarian aid that's been sent into the Ukraine, are these actions, do you find them sufficient to curtail the Russian invasion of Ukraine? And if not, what additional measures outside of kind of these information campaigns do you think leaders of democracies should take?
So as I understand the sanctions are not only to stop the war, they're also actually aimed at preventing Putin from fighting the war because he won't be able to afford it. Unfortunately, that's a long process. I mean, that may take a couple of months, but that's the idea. They're not just about frightening him or something like that. Nobody really believed that would work, and so that may work, but it will take some time. Unfortunately, this is a war, and one of the ways to end a war is to win it. And right now, most of the discussion in Washington and in also European capitals is, what weapons can we give the Ukrainians that will help them defend themselves, but will not spark a direct conflict with Russia? And so, whether you're talking about anti-missile weapons or anti-tank weapons or drones of different kinds, I think that's the solution. I mean, I know that it's not the answer that people want. People want there to be something other than a military solution. But I think right now, on the day that you and I are speaking, there isn't really a non-military solution. It's an ongoing, open fight, and somebody has to win it.
Sure. And going off that, do you think that this military solution will necessitate either American or Western European NATO involvement in the conflict directly, or simply through providing weaponry to the Ukrainians already fighting?
So as I understand it, the Pentagon is bending over backwards to make sure that there is no direct conflict. And they're doing that because they want to avoid some kind of escalation that would that would widen the conflict, or that could even, I don't know if I quite believe this, but would even make it into a nuclear conflict. And so that's why you're seeing this kind of self-limitation. We aren't doing everything that we could. We could do more, and we're not, because we don't want Americans to be directly confronting Russians, at least not right now.
Absolutely. All right, Ms. Applebaum, thank you so much for joining us for this Take 5 interview. It's been really a pleasure to speak with you.